I'm Margaret. Excuse me. I'm Margaret in Windsor, and I was kidnapped in '41 and brought to Moulton, Alabama, given the name of a twin, Peggy Ann Dempsey. I married a Childers, and that's the name I still have to use. And I usually put up a lot of documents or information, but it's up on YouTube if you care to look. I have two. One is offline, and I haven't been able to get it back yet, and the one I'm using now. And I'm on Facebook and Google Plus some. So I've got the information up there if you care to go back and look. I'm doing this one today. I tried to put it up yesterday and something went wrong. I wanted to go back to, and I'm just going to give this and try to make it short and see if I can get it up. I did a medical malpractice book called MD, A License to Kill. And I lived at Moonraker Apartments in Marietta, Georgia. Moonraker Apartments were owned by Penthouse Magazine, sold and then owned by the Mormon Church out of Utah, which is associated with genealogy also. And a few years later, the movie, which is a 007, Roger Moore came out, Moonraker, and which was the name of the apartments I was living in. Now then, a little bit, maybe a year after Roger Moore's Moonraker came out, was A License to Kill with Timothy Dalton, another 007, which you associate with the Monarch. I wrote the book, and I didn't know about my real name then. I didn't know about being kidnapped and brought to Moulton, Alabama. I grew up being told I was the twin Peggy and Carl, the other twin, was dead. When in fact I found out in 1983 that both twins had been killed by their mother. They were illegitimate, and that's what they were called back then. And the illegitimate comes in again with Wallace Warfield Simpson later on when I start finding out my real name. When I worked for Fred Simpson, the district attorney in 1980, Simpson was associated with Wallace Simpson. The name is like clues to my identity. Wallace Simpson married a double, an imposter, not my father, Edward VIII. My father, Edward VIII, was wed and always was till they died. And they were alive October the 20th of 1986, I know. The double that married Wallace Simpson, or imposter, and became the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, died in 1972. So that whole thing was a sham and a plot to take down my father with character assassination, and they did. My dad was married to Claudia Ruth O'Keefe, American schoolteacher, sister to Georgia O'Keefe, the artist. My mom was the Queen of England, and Winston Churchill burned the files. And my birth certificate, although I'm told it has to be still around. Let's put it that way. My father was forced to abdicate in December of 1936. And remember, my mom was the queen then, and you don't hear about her. You hear about, and nothing wrong with this, Grace Kelly, Princess Grace of Monaco, is an American, and everybody loves her, and that's great. I'm not saying anything. My mom was an American too, and she was married to my dad, who has been so defamed and lied about. It is so horrific, because the people that took him down and then later kidnapped me are so corrupt and have so much control. And evidently, it doesn't matter. Some crimes are okay, and evidently the biggest heist going was this one. And it's okay to people because that's evident with Pippa. I shouldn't even say her name because Pippa, shouldn't say her name, I won't. She's William's wife, Kate's sister, so I'll leave it at that. Because they're the crooks. Elizabeth was living in Buckingham Palace when I was kidnapped. I was born in 39, kidnapped in 41. My father had moved, and mother had moved back into Buckingham Palace and that's where I was kidnapped from. And George VI, the illegal Elizabeth's father, helped kidnap me. Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Bilderbergers, and Joe Kennedy was ambassador appointed by Roosevelt, President, FDR, and JFK helped fly me out of there, helped in my kidnapping. That's his son, that later became president, and the Warren Commission covered up his death because it would lead back to my kidnapping and the takedown of my father, Edward VIII, with character assassination and kidnapping his daughter. So now I want to go back. I was doing the book, and it was so horrific. My whole life has been that way, the pain and suffering, and my kids, who are heirs after me, and I haven't known where they are, because when what I'm about to say happened, I was no longer able to find them or even know anything. But anyway, I moved from Moonraker because so much was happening, and Larry Flint was shot during that time, March of the 6th of 78. And his was a mind control murder. The book I was writing about, MD License to Kill, was in part about mind control murders. And I'll leave it at that, programming people to shoot, kill, appear to commit suicide, etc., take planes down. I could go on and on. It's unlimited. And now then, that's so long ago, they can mass program people, armies. So I moved up to not Warren House, I moved from Moonraker, just up the street on Bentley Drive in Marietta, to Laurelwood. And Laurelwood, I got a letter from the FBI June the 21st of 79, ongoing investigation, national security involved. And I also had a letter from Agent Guest. I had gone there maybe a year earlier, or months, well, probably just 6 months earlier. They had a satellite office. They had been in Marietta for years and years and years. I go there, and things like this happen. It was cause and effect. I went first to him, and his name was Agent Guest, and I remember I had to go around back and climb up the stairs to the office, and it was just a itty bitty office. But it was in the building was bigger, but anyway, I went up and talked to him, and a little bit later, it wasn't, I don't think a month later, that satellite office closed down. So later on, I went downtown to the FBI office downtown on, I believe it was on Peachtree Street. And I know where it was. I can remember every detail about it. Anyway, back to the letter was sent to me by U.S. Attorney Harper, issued by the FBI, ongoing investigation, national security involved. I had a letter that was written in red ink by Agent Guest to me. It was mailed, I remember, the day I came to move from Moonraker into Laurelwood. It was postmarked. That was March the 8th of 79. I've forgotten what he said, but it was odd that it was written in red ink and just his name and everything. And later, all this, the book and everything, all the papers I had, documents were taken. I had them in the safety deposit box that, don't tell me I'm going to forget his name now. It was Jimmy Carter's, President Carter. He was governor of Georgia, but I can't think of his name. He owned Southern. He was in the staff anyway. He owned the bank. And later, when I was put on the side of the road, no money, no nothing. Later, I went back, and I called a man who was marshal, a U.S. Marshal that I knew, had been introduced to, and he came out and went, because they had actually, it's only over in Terrell Mill, where I worked at Urban Medical Hospital years ago. All this can be checked out. You can't make it up. The bank that I had my book and all the papers in had been torn down. They had actually taken and moved with the safety deposit boxes just across the same side street to a new bank. I can't think of his name now. I think they put him under investigation. But I don't think he did anything wrong, Jimmy Carter, with mine. I think, oh, I don't know if they did or not. Let me just say that, because later the book and everything disappeared. Everything that was in the box disappeared. Illegal. I'd managed to make the payments on that if I didn't have a bite to eat. So a lot of good it did me. But anyway, I moved into Laurelwood, and I had my ex-husband. I thought, now then, there's question about that. But anyway, by the way, I want to put this up. There was an addendum to my divorce that was supposed to be a divorce. Addendum, like an addendum to my father's abdication, that said that if an heir was born, that it would not disinherit the heir, and I was born in 1939, Victoria II, heir to the British Crown, the day I was born, which would have brought back my father's power of attorney and guardian, and replaced the correct monarch. Instead, his own brother helped take him down, and Elizabeth, and they all know about my mom, and my God, I was 2 years old. They kidnapped me from Buckingham Palace, and Elizabeth was living in Buckingham Palace with her mom and dad. It was kind of like, well, you get the gist. One's a legitimate and one's a cold-blooded killer that's made out to be the good guy, just like his daughter Elizabeth. It's all in who's got the money, I guess. It doesn't matter to a lot of people. Anyway, I guess I'm skipping a lot here. At Laurelwood, I went to, when my husband or ex-husband came back, I had him come back because things were happening to me and the boys. And he came back just a few days out of the month. I told the manager that we were divorced. It was my security deposit, and the lease had already been signed by me. And I told her to make sure that it was okay, that he was just going to stay there a couple of days, a month, etc., and why. Well, she started telling me about her uncle being an FBI agent in charge of the Patty Hearst kidnapping. Well, the Patty Hearst Castle Hearst newspapers are a part, the newspaper, the Hearst, of my kidnapping, take down of my dad. I found out later. Oh, yes, I did. They're into publishing, and it's bizarre. But anyway, I thought it kind of funny that she's telling me this. Now then, I'm going to skip here to, I'm living in the same apartment and getting harassed, and my kids just terrorized. And I decide that I'm going to go out and spend a couple of weeks with Laura Childers Klein, John's sister, my husband's or ex-husband's sister. She's in Abilene, Texas, and they are CPAs. And made it perfectly clear before I went, and my ex-husband called her to make sure that I was going to come out there and stay with her for a couple of weeks, and if I could find a job, I was going to bring the boys out there. But that depended on a job, etc. So I called her just before I went out there in March of 79. No, 80. In March of 80. And I left to go out there. I got to Texas, and I'm sleeping in rest areas. They've kept me penniless for so long. And when I got to Texas, to Dallas, I called her. I did have the money. I stayed at a Days Inn that night and called her the next morning. And she informed me that I was no longer welcome. I'm going to turn and see if this is going up. And that shocked me. I just called her before I left Atlanta. Marietta. So I had to turn around and go back. Here's the kicker: I was only gone for a couple of days. I got back, and I no longer had an apartment. The manager of the apartment had allowed my ex-husband, and she's the one I went to and totally knew. His name wasn't on the lease, nothing. And now then, these many months later, you could say I just went across town or something almost. That doesn't give him or anybody else the right to come in and take my apartment. It was all planned. She allowed him to take it, sign a new lease, transfer my deposit, and he even got control of my banking account during that time somehow. And when I got back, I had gone to the Cobb County Police. I had gone to the media. There was no one who didn't know about this. And about Larry Flint's shooting and mind control. And I didn't know my real name at that time. It happened in '83 when I was flown out to Larry Flint's during a political campaign in Larry McDonald, U.S. Congressman, doctor, that I had written about. The plane he was on went down August 31st of '83, and Larry Flint flew me out to his home in Bel Air twice, and he did an editorial, and said I knew who was responsible for his shooting in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And it was a very good endorsement and editorial, but that was in '83. I'm going back to March of '80. And I'm going to cut this off here and make a second one.